Don Bluth and Gary Goldman were ex-Disney animators who left Disney and set up on their own adventure to make their own full-feature animated movies. Within the span of 18 years, they made 11 films, with their final contribution to cinema, that being Titan AE, released in 2000 on the dawn of the new millennium. While in the span of 25 years they haven't yet made another movie. It isn't to say that there weren't any movies within the filmmaker's pipeline. Don Bluth has frequently mentioned that he would love to make another movie on The Secret of NIMH, and throughout the 2010s and 2020s, they've been steadily trying to make a feature film of their 1980s arcade game, Dragon's Lair. But in the late 90s, they were given a script for a possible 2D animated movie. The story was set 20,000 years ago in the last Great Ice Age, where the main heroes would have been an unlikely band of misfits, based off the extinct megafauna of the Pleistocene period. There would be a woolly mammoth with a temperament, a Smilodon who was only in it for his own ego, and a Megatherium, also known as a ground sloth, who acted as the instigator trying to keep the group together. The trio would put their differences aside and would return an infant, back to a tribe of their natural predator, humans. The project would end up being allocated to a new developing CGI studio, who had recently won an Academy Award for their short film, Bunny, a story of the final hours of an elderly rabbit. After 4 years in development in 2002, the studio would release their first feature film, being a reworked version of the rejected Don Bluth project. That movie was Ice Age, and it would go on to spawn 4 cinematic sequels, and would allow the studio Blue Sky to produce numerous other features. But many have wondered as to what the Don Bluth version of Ice Age may have been like. So in this program, let's take a closer look on that what if. There's scantily very little information about Don Bluth and Gary Goldman's involvement with Ice Age. Trivial pages on various sites state that the movie was going to be less comedy orientated and far more heavier on the drama. Additionally, it's been thrown around that Don Bluth passed on the project after he found out that it was going to be a CGI movie, allegedly having a distaste for the medium. However, none of these claims can be backed up with any verifiable sources. It's never been undeniably confirmed that both men worked on the movie. A blog post on the site Animated Movies cites an interview from Don Bluth and Gary Goldman, confirming that the men had read the Ice Age script in 1997 as a possible feature to produce at Fox Animation. It doesn't state which of the two men said the following, but here's the quote. Bill Mechanic sent Ice Age over for us to read for a traditionally animated movie. He had told us that he wanted to differentiate Fox Animation stories from Disney. When we read it, it read like Disney's 3 Men and a Baby. When we told him this, he pulled it back for more thought. We suggested that maybe it would be good as a CGI film. It would help to separate it from the standard Disney fare. And it did. This was before they bought VIFX or Blue Sky Studios. It was decided that it would be done as a 3D project. It's currently the closest we have to a public interview with Don Bluth and Gary Goldman's involvement with Ice Age. From what the quote says, it seems like Ice Age wasn't very far in development, and that Don Bluth and Gary Goldman were very distantly involved, and it appears that it was their idea for the movie to be in CGI, contradicting the earlier claim of Don Bluth's distaste for that type of animation. Fox Animation had the goal of trying to make and release a feature film in the span of 18 months. By November of '97, the company had just released Anastasia. 2 months earlier, in September, the studio had just been polishing off their first draft of Titan AE, which would become their next and final feature animated movie. But Don Bluth and Gary Goldman didn't start directing work just yet on the feature, as they were preoccupied on the direct-to-video feature Bartok the Magnificent, which they were committed to up until the summer of 1998. Although a secondary crew did start pre-production on Titan AE during early 1998. By the time that Don and Gary finally came on board to the project, they only had 19 months to complete the movie, So overall, the directors had a very tight window working at Fox Animation. So whatever pre-production work was completed of Ice Age during this time frame, it probably wasn't under the direct umbrella of Don and Gary. There might be a slim chance that they may have taken a day out to oversee on how things were getting along with other projects, but they were certainly very busy up until the release of Titan AE. By late 1998, the Ice Age project was moved over to Blue Sky Studios. So whatever work was completed on the Don Bluth version, or perhaps more appropriately named the Fox Animation version of Ice Age, it only spent just over a year at the Animation Fox division, so it's a safe educated guess that it probably didn't get very far in development. In June of 2000, Fox increased the staff load at Blue Sky Studios to specifically help development on Ice Age, and in that same month, Fox had closed down their animation division, Fox Animation. It's certainly compelling to wonder as to what Ice Age may have been like in the hands from the creators of The Land Before Time, taking what they did with dinosaurs and applying the same style and execution to the Pleistocene animals. But there's very few sources to either confirm or elaborate as to what the Don Bluth version of Ice Age would have been like. Featured on the 2-disc Ice Age Extreme Cool Edition were 6 deleted scenes from the movie, which combined they run for about 8 minutes in length. The main bulk of the cut content is a subplot with Sid trying to avoid his mate, Sylvia, who would have been voiced by Kristen Johnson.
I see you breathing. Now you're holding your breath?
Sid's original personality that he was going to be a character that just couldn't commit. Somebody that didn't like to get too involved, but would instead try and talk his way out things, being a slow mover but a fast talker, and that he was actively trying to avoid a female sloth named Sylvia. There were 2 different versions of Sid's introduction, one where he wakes up late for the migration and hustles some kids for their grapes. Yeah, this character trait of Sid hustling was very quickly dropped. And then the other introduction was very similar to the final film, although with Sylvia being included. Ultimately, it was decided that Sid would be more appealing as a character that was left behind, and didn't necessarily understood as to why. But the audience would very quickly clock in and could tell that and Sid was a wee bit unlikable in this early opening, as Sid pushes Sylvia into a group of Galactodons as a quick way to get rid of her. This certainly made it harder later on to believe that it would be Sid to insist to take the baby back to the humans.
You know, he ditches this girl, he throws her into traffic, and then
later on he's just trying to get everybody together to save the baby. It was kind of like a little conflict.
It didn't make sense.
So the 2 scenes with Sylvia being near to the beginning and midway point of the film were reworked to remove her, such as in our second scene where Sid is pretending that he's been eaten by Diego. She was swapped out for the rhinos instead. Oh, so while we're here, according to the audio commentary, when Sid's got the baby and trying to win over the hearts of 2 other sloths, it was originally written with a fair few innuendos.
Where we're going, he can't follow if you catch my innuendo.
What do you say you go jump in a tar pit?
Okay, so you're busy. How about you?
Pig.
Just keeping the humour classy like an old carry-on film. Anyway, in the audio commentary for the deleted scenes, directors Chris Wedge and Carl Sodiner revealed that Sid and Sylvia would have had a wee bit of an arc in the original storyline.
They get together at the end. There was going to be a tag sequence where we saw the migration animals at the beach, and Sid and Manny get there, and Sylvia's looking for Sid again, and at first you think that he doesn't want to see her, but then you see that they have a little Sid. We even modeled a little Sid baby.
We had baby Sid modeled, yeah.
Sequel.
Although how complete this version of the ending was is certainly not clear in the commentary, but there was another ending that was very close to be finalised, such as when Diego collapses in the final battle, he was intended to be killed off.
We had to tone down the characters a lot because Diego was really supposed to die. Oops.
Yeah, well, he dies here.
He dies here, yes.
But eventually, it was reworked for Diego to rejoin Sid and Manny by the end of the film, explaining away his survival by using one of his 9 lives. In the audio commentary, the directors don't go into detail as to why they decided to change the ending.
We had enough reason to believe after we'd lived with it for a while that Diego should come back.
People actually clap at that moment.
It's a cartoon. Come on.
Gotta make it happy.
Give it to him.
Although, according to Diego's voice actor Dennis Leary, the change occurred after a preview audience didn't respond well to Diego's death. He apparently discussed this on an episode of The Tonight Show in 2012. Unfortunately, I couldn't relocate that program for this video, so it's difficult to clarify what he said word for word. But what can be officially verified going back to the audio commentary to the movie was that there were two versions of Soto's death scene. In the final film, it's Manny that pushes him to the wall, which leads to the icicles falling and killing him. But initially, it was going to be Diego that was going to push him to the wall instead. The directors were very nearly going to swap it back as such, implying that it may very well did get as far as final animation. 20 plus years on, Soto's original death scene has not yet been made available to the public.
Although we were criticized by a couple of like 10 or 12-year-old boys that couldn't understand why there wasn't any blood.
We actually were very careful about the violence. We wanted
Yeah,
to
we
feel
were.
active, but we were afraid. Like we had a much more violent. We had all the cats jumping on Manny.